see, let's talk about your family.
This is, what is this? This is Saturday, June 27th, right? In 2014.
28th.
28th,
To say the 20, what's your birthday, Lou?
29th of June, this Sunday.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow you'll be how old?
97.
How do you feel?
Feel fine.
Yeah.
Feel fine.
Happy birthday, Lou.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's,
You know, your dad and mom, grandma, and Mimi and Uncle Nick. Uncle Nick was a hot fella, hot-headed fella, I'm telling you.
who is Uncle Nick? You mean my dad's dad, my grandfather?
Yeah.
Hot-headed how?
He was hard-headed.
Really?
But anyway, I think it was in 1924, I think that's the date, when they went down to Miami. I remember them coming by the house and telling everybody goodbye. And then he went to work for I forget the man's name, but he run an electrical supply hardware store. And I think Uncle Nick was the bookkeeper.
Okay.
And
Does that mean my dad went down to Miami then too?
yeah, they went and they had a house right on Coral Gables, the old house of that on the golf course.
Uh-huh.
And we went down there I was down there a couple of times. But anyway, they would come back in the summertime and we had rented a house on Gulf Beach Highway, close to, well, where did you eat at now?
We ate on Gulf Beach Highway at what was the name of it? Triggers.
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 Well,
Yeah.
that's why we go there all the time, even Tom and them, I do. But this side of Triggers, say about 2 miles, it was a lagoon, a boat road going off the lagoon, one of the best fishing spots in the place. And the rental houses were right up from the beach across the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd come up there, and I know then they used to go to a place called Harris's Fish Camp. And that was a place, there was a fish camp, but no screens on the windows, and mosquitoes eat you up, and the gnats will eat you up. And those days, man, it was terrible. But so they come back and forth a number of times there. And then Papu must have went down there. It was about 6 months or a year after your dad then went.
Down to Miami.
Yeah. And he was got into southern real estate. And I think the 26th hurricane, he come back here. He had come back with a big hutmobile. Tan hutmobile with a tan canvas top on it.
Dad had it?
No, Papu.
Papu.
Brand new.
Really?
And he on 12th Avenue, the Lure Street where we live, he parked it right behind the house. And we lost 2 chimneys that year.
From a hurricane?
Hurricane. And one chimney fell right on the top of it.
Brand new Hutmobile?
Right behind the kitchen. And we had a wood stove, and the whole ceiling dropped right on that wood stove. And man,
What year would that be?
26.
26?
There was a hurricane that, I think the first one I can't recall, I wasn't born, but I know 1960, 1926, hurricanes were coming every 10 years.
Really?
You know, but that hurricane was rough. But anyway, they used to come back and forth all the time, and Papu would go back and forth. And brother was always accompanying him back and forth. You know, one time they probably around must have been around 28 or 29. They come back. And they were working on Papu's car, and they taking the piston, put new rings in it, and tore it down completely. And I know they were working until about 2 or 3 o'clock on it. Little Ramondo, who's a part of our family, and they pulled it out, and you had to break in the bearings. You had to pull the car and break them in, because the clearance hadn't been established. They done the best they could by scraping the bearings. You put bluing on there, and then you tighten them up, and then you see if the bluing it had no clearance. It had got the clearance, and you scrape it out, and you put them back in. And I know about 3 o'clock in the morning, they were working and took the car out and drug it, and finally got it running. And they left, and man, in Chattahoochee, the bearings froze up. Chattahoochee. And that was a crazy house.
Yeah.
And brother officer, he said he said you go up to the fence, and he says one boy, he just followed it, and also evidently they had another man, you know, and he said he followed him all over. But then it was in Chattahoochee about 3 days after the axle was broke. And so they got a new axle. But there's always something breaking down on you.
Well, in those days, how long would it take to drive from Pensacola to Miami?
It seemed like it took you 2 days at least, more. Maybe 2.5 days. Going the way you drove straight through or whatever.
You just mentioned somebody, Lou, that I remember hearing Dad talk about, but I don't understand what her connection is to the family. Ruthie Raimondo.
Ruthie Raimondo. Well, my grandpa, Philip Brown, it was 5 brothers come over from Germany.
Did you say his name was Philip Brown?
Philip Brown.
He was Lou Brown's dad, your grandfather, right?
And they 5 brothers come over from Germany. And
any idea what year?
No. It had to be in the Civil War, because one of them, I know Dad's father fought in the Civil War.
Your father's father?
Yeah.
Was he one of the 5 brothers?
He was one of the 5 brothers.
Okay.
And they took the name Brown. It was probably 3 of them took the name Brown. Other 2 took the name Braun.
B-R-A-U-n?
Yeah.
Well, that was their real name in Germany, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they settled in, I can't say where both of them, 2 of them settled in. One of them settled in New Orleans. And I think that's where your brown coffee comes from. So then the other one might have been in Mobile.
The 2 Brahms.
Yeah. And we had, anyway, they had about 10 children.
Among the 5 of them?
No, among the Philip Brown. He had about 10 children.
Your grandfather?
Yes.
Okay. Where did he settle?
He settled here.
Did his other 2 brothers, the Browns, settle here also?
No, he was the only one settled here.
I got you.
The other one's over in Mobile. I can't even get it straight myself. Anyway, he was he made furniture and cabinet maker.
In Pensacola?
In Pensacola.
Right after the Civil War?
Yeah.
Huh.
So.
And you say he had about 10 kids?
Oh yeah.
No.
I can't even. Let's see. Ruth's was a Brown. And I can't even name them. I just think he only, but anyway, there was Allie, was down from Tampa. I'd had to get the Christmas tree out to show you. If you want a copy of the genealogy, we got it.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
That's all the Browns going back.
Ann Brown, just to say this, Ann Brown, whose dad had 3 brothers. And Ann, she went through and she went over to Bavaria where they was. I'm not going to push you into this, but anyway, Ruth Brown, her dad's sister's child.
Ruthie Raimondo.
And she married a Spaniard, Raimundo.
She's your father's sister's daughter.
Yeah. And she, they lived right down from us. There was a cluster of them. And Uncle Raimundo, he was a character. He was a character. A little short fellow with a little, he used to wear a derby all the time and smoke. And
come on, you guys.
He lived right down the street from us. And she used to have a cow and grew, and she planted fruit trees and all.
Yeah.
And I remember the cow tethered across the street from us with a rope, eating the grass on that round off the grass plot.
Was this in downtown Pensacola?
Right in up on 1412 East Road.
Right downtown.
And they used to live behind us, but then they moved down there, Uncle Frank. And then there was Ruth, and there was Marie. That was Leo. That's what they. Ruth Raimondo, Maria Raimondo, and I forget her name now. That was the 3 children. They had 3 children.
Well, I believe that I met when I was very young, like a teenager or less. I believe I met Ruthie Raimondo.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
When I was a little tag.
She married a Mexican. There was a Mexican family. She married into that. And they had 10 children.
In Pensacola?
Yeah.
Where are the Raimondos today? Have they all?
All around. Their name was Acosta, John Acosta. He married John Acosta.
Yeah?
And he died quite a while back. And Luther just died last year.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's been about, maybe not a year, quite a year ago.
How old was she?
She was just about my age.
Wow. Wow.
She was on those, she was on the front porch and she made a misstep and fell off.
Huh.
But they all lived around us. But getting back to your mom and dad, I remember brother coming up one day and one year and they had his golf clubs with him and he went back and he got down to your house there and he was smelling around and somebody had they had put some boiled eggs in his golf club bag. And man, he had to throw it away.
Was that as a joke or accidental?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. Because you always try to prepare all your food in that.
Sure. Well, let me ask this, Lou. How did you first meet my dad, Nick Condon? How did you two first get to know each other?
Well, they lived about 5 blocks from us.
The Condons did?
Yeah, your dad and Mimi lived about 5 blocks north of us.
Okay. And you and Mimi was your grandmother's sister?
Yeah. Johnson.
Mimi Johnson. Well, look, we got somebody that just came in and added to the added to the show. Look, it's John and Tina Peach. Hi, you guys. You added a little. You added some sound effects there.
Fade to black.
Well, anyway, I didn't know brothers too much. I mean, I knew, of course, I was very young then, real young.
What year were you born, Lou?
1917.
And Dad was born in 1911, so he was 6 years older than you.
But I remember when they left here, they going on to make their fortune down in Miami.
Who's they? Did he go down with...
Y'all was the first ones, and Papu went the next.
Oh, so it was my dad and his brothers and sisters and his dad and mom went to Miami?
Yeah.
About what year?
I think it was 24. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 24.
Well, that was just 2 years before the 1926 hurricane, and the 26 hurricane wiped out Miami, didn't it?
Right, and it wiped us out too. And brother, they'd come up here during the summer months, and then.
During those years, 24, 25.
Oh yeah, I think they come up for about, I can recall about 3 or 4 times, and Uncle Nick come up here, and I don't know what his problem was. Anyway, he come up here.
You mean he moved back up?
No, he didn't move. He come up by himself.
Leaving his wife and kids in Miami?
Something, he was sick or something. I don't deal with the details. Anyway, then we had a 2-story garage, and somehow he started making a kitchen, duplicating a kitchen, and there were the cabinets all in child size for the girls. And man, I know them big young one up there, and man, I guess the other ones, and man, he'd get mad with them. Tell them to get out of there. He didn't want them to see them.
You mean my grandfather, Nick Condon, would get mad at big gentlemen?
And I can't tell you how long he stayed. I really don't. But he probably stayed, I mean, close to 9 months, I guess, up there.
Well, was this at your mom and dad's home? Uncle Louie and Haiti?
Yeah.
Huh. And he stayed 9 months and
I think he stayed about that long.
And your aunt Mimi was still down in Miami with Dad and the other kids. What year was that about? How old were you? Hard to remember, huh?
It is, because everything is flowing together. It was probably 1928 or something, somewhere in there.
After the 26 hurricane.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
And then brother, Sanger Theater was putting in air conditioning in the theaters in, I think it was 1926. And Brother Condon was up here. Oh, I tell you, when I first recall when Brother he come up here, and they was building a new A&P store on almost downtown. And they had a flat board platform about the size of this room here.
Uh-huh.
And they mixed all the concrete there. And they'd pour the sand and cement and mix it and then put the water to it. And there's about 6 people shoveling that sand, but they had to take it, turn it over. And Brother was amongst one of them.
How old was he then?
I don't know how old. He probably was about 17, 18 years old, I guess.
That sounds like hard work, Lou.
Boy, him and a bunch of other colored people were there.
Really?
And that was work. Then they'd put it in wheelbarrows and it was a big store.
But they didn't have any of this machinery that would
You
go
didn't
around.
have machines in those days.
Man.
You done this, you done this. Then you get the wheel power and
Well, do you remember seeing him doing that?
Oh yeah, I can recall that.
So you might have been 6, 7, 8 years old then.
Yeah.
Huh.
And, then they started putting the air conditioning in the theaters, and they needed metal workers. So we had a metal worker union here, and Dad was part of it, even though he worked on the station.
Uncle Louis.
Yeah. And he got a job for brother there. So his brother was there was putting the air conditioning in, the cooling towers and all.
Well, your grandfather was Papu Johnson, right?
Yeah.
And his two daughters were my grandmother, Mimi,
Yeah.
your Aunt Mimi, and your grandmother,
Yeah.
Hazel,
Yeah.
Haiti. Who was Papu's wife?
I can't. Oh, it was she married. Well, you said the name.
It was Marks. Dad told me.
Mark. She was Mark.
He said the name was Julia Marks.
Julia's right. Julia.
M-A-R-Q-U-E-S.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was your grandmother and Dad's
Yeah.
grandmother.
And I never knew her. She died. She died long before.
Did you know anything about her family, where they came from? You mentioned the other day that they might have been French.
They come from over in France, England. Should I say the Huguenots? He was, and they come over here.
Who was?
That
The French Huguenot.
of the
Julia Marks' father?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the Civil War. No, it goes back to the Revolutionary War.
No kidding.
Because they daughters of the Revolution.
Really?
Yeah, the Marx girls were daughters of the Revolution.
The Marks family.
Yeah.
So they came back as French. They came over in the 1700s or before.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Well, did Papu meet Julia Marks in Pensacola,
I'm sure.
or was she from somewhere else?
No, the Marxes lived here all years, yeah.
Are there still Marxes in Pensacola now?
My sister, my cousin married a Marx. I think all the Marxes died out. I don't know if any at all there.
So Papu's wife was Julia Marks,
That's correct.
and her father's line was French Huguenot.
Yeah,
And her, you know anything about her mother?
no.
No. And then Papu, what about Papu's father?
All I know is I understand Papu come from Canada. That's all I know.
By himself,
Yeah.
not with his mom and dad?
I don't know any. He had a brother.
They can't, did they come down together?
I don't know. I really, I don't know any details really on it.
Do you know anything about what part of Canada he came from?
No, I'm sorry, I still don't know.
Just name was Johnson, right?
Yeah,
And he was Norwegian, right?
yeah.
Well, you know, Dad's grandfather, the one who fought in the Civil War, he came from Montreal. He came down from Canada.
That's right.
But there was no connection between the Johnsons and the
No.
Condons, right? Yeah. Papu, we were asking you the other day, where did the nickname Papu come from?
Well, I think that's a generic name that's used all over the world, I think.
Well, the funny thing is my daughter Mackenzie, who's now 28, is dating a fellow his name's Alex Rusas, and his father is Greek, but his mother is Norwegian. And Alex's grandfather, they call him the Greek guy, they call him Papu.
Yeah.
And Michelle and I think, Michelle, by the way, let's see where Michelle is.
I'm hiding in the corner.
Yeah,
Poor Michelle.
I'm trying to make this thing turn and say, hey, there's Michelle over there.
Hello.
Michelle, what do you know about Alex and Papu, his grandfather?
I only only know that they call him Papu, and that Alex's mom's family is Norwegian.
But I thought she was Irish.
No, Norwegian.
Really? Well, could be.
It's a universal name.
Well, it could be Norwegian. It could be Scandinavian. You don't
Oh,
ever.
yeah, that's all the same.
How about well? How did my dad get the nickname brother?
Well, he was like a brother.
To you?
Yeah.
Did you give him his?
All of them. Everybody.
Did you know Judy and Peggy
Yeah, I knew all of them.
and Jack and Ruth?
I went down there. I'll tell you, don't know how much time we have here. Bristol don't get off too much off the coast now. I just followed up with brother. And then he went over to him and a friend of our family had a son, Mabry. And they went over to New Orleans and installed air conditioning. Well, they probably was over there a couple of years doing the way.
Dad told me about that. He told me he worked in New Orleans as an air conditioning installer.
Yeah.
He would have been in his 20s probably.
Yeah. I'm probably about the mid-20s, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And then, after that, he may have come back here, but I can't recall him coming back here and doing any work. But I know he come back here in Papu in 27. I was in the 5th grade, you know. That's when Papu built a summer house over here,
Right here on Colbert Avenue.
where Pat's house.
Do you remember coming over here when you were that age, when he was building that house?
Oh, God, yeah, they had a Negro Sunday, and they built it out of scraps, though.
What did this neighborhood look like then in the
There was
1920s?
nothing, no neighborhood. You come through from Guppy. Well, let me go a little bit back a little bit more than that. Papu had 40 acres down the road here. His brother used to live with him. And they had it, and he grew some. I knew he grew watermelon. I know that.
Well, did my dad live with him when he was in high school or after he graduated from high school?
I don't know. I can't recall. But anyway, he lived with Papu,
Yeah?
and they had it was. Papu had a bunch of. Well, he was a politician anyway.
Papu was?
Oh gosh, yeah. And he had friends down there. They'd always had poker games. And brother was the one that had to do the dirty work, fixing sandwiches and all that for him.
But he'd get tips. He'd get
Yeah,
tips for that, right?
And I told you, I might have told you, but anyway, he didn't have any ice or refrigerator, ice boxes, or anything. They dug a hole in the ground. He put a block of ice, one big blocks of ice in there, put his whatever meat or milk or whatever he had on top of that and threw a piece of canvas over it.
And that was their
That
refrigerator.
was the refrigerator.
Well, could it be that my dad was living with Papu because my dad didn't get along with his father?
Sure, that was the whole thing.
Really?
Well, it was just like when his dad was making money as a caddy. For what I know, Mimi took all the money and spent it on the girls.
I heard Dad talk about that.
And so when brother come up here, he turned his money over to my mother.
To Hazel, his aunt Hazel.
Yeah, and she's the one that saves his money.
Really?
Yeah.
Because his mother Mimi would take it and spend it on the girls. Boy,
Now there might be some question in that, but that's the way I see it.
I remember Dad telling me about that when I was younger.
And,
Well, when they were playing poker out there, does that mean was it legal to play poker?
oh, that's you could do anything you want to.
They didn't have bureaucrats then.
They didn't have nothing. There wasn't even paved road out there.
Just dirt roads?
Dirt road. And then, just about that time, I can't tell you what year it was. It had to be 28 or something. No, it had to be 26 or 27 because it was the boom hadn't quite ended down South Florida, so they started to build a big hotel down on the beach. The boom come.
The crash.
Yeah. And Papu come up here. He had a black book, bank book, and that's all he had. He didn't have no money. He just had the book here showing how much money he was supposed to have.
And how much was in there?
I don't forgot. But anyway, they built us on a dummy road like a railway or them narrow gauge rails, and they went down from uphill by where you were and started building the road with a dummy track all the way to Gulf Beach. And then they had a big festivity. They had a bathing contest and all down there. And I remember the cars were parked almost up a little further where you went to eat. Because when you go up there, you go a little further and you go across the canal.
Uh-huh.
And then people walked all the way from there to Gulf Beach.
Boy.
And that was it. And then the hotel now got finished. In fact, all you have was a steel structure. And about 15 years ago, I think they tore it down. But that was the end of Papu out there. Then, you know, he was a state legislator, Papu.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
About what? About what years?
I can't tell you, but he's the one that introduced free school books for the school children.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
And he had something come up. Anyway, he got out of that. Then he became the city building inspector.
In Pensacola?
Pensacola. He built the two county jail and the city jail. And he did some other work. The Big Jim can tell you about that because they looked up the records. Jim Johnson doing this and doing that.
Yeah.
And then in one election, he bet on the judge. He bet his house on the judge.
And?
The judge lost he didn't win, and he had to move out of his house the next day.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Whoa, man. Was this during the Depression? Was this in the 30s?
It had to be before the Depression, this did.
Well, let me ask you, we're here in your house where you and Thelma raised all your kids, including this one right here. Oh, look, there's Tina Brown. Oh, hi. That's Tina Brown. Peach happens to be here. You walked in. When the Papu first built that house here, you're saying it's across the street?
Yeah.
Are we on Bayou Chico or Bayou Grande?
No, Bayou Grande.
Bayou Grande. Do you know where that shack was now? Can you point it out?
It burned down.
Do you know where it was though?
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's right where Pat's house
Right
is.
there?
That was Grandma and Grandpa's house, wasn't it?
Was that Grandma?
Yeah.
Well,
That's
Haiti,
right, yeah.
Uncle Louie and
But
Hades.
the place they used to rent it out to Navy people.
To what?
To Navy people.
Oh, okay.
Sailors. And then after I got married, I come back home here now, and I lived at home for a while with Thelma. I think about 3 or 4 months.
Where was that in Uncle Louie and Hades' house?
Yeah, then we moved in the shack, and it was nothing but.
You mean the shack that
It
Papu had built in 1927?
It was an open porch there, and you walked into the kitchen. Then you had one bedroom, and another bedroom, then you had a bathroom. And then the main, in the kitchen, you had what they call a force pump. A pump it'll pump water, and it had a 50-gallon tank up in the attic.
Uh-huh.
And Brother Condon and I, well, they used to pick me up on Friday at school. I was in the 5th grade, and I would come down here and live with them until school come Monday.
Over the weekend.
Yeah. And
Was it Papu and brother living here?
Yeah.
In that shack?
yeah. Well, it wasn't too bad. But anyway, Brother Conlon and our first job was to pump that 50-gallon water tank up full. And we had a spillover on it where you could hear the water dripping on the dripping outside. You know the tank was full. Papu would immediately go in there and take a shower. And use all the water.
Okay.
We had a potbelly stove in there in the room. And Mary Johnson, his Duddy Johnson, J.D. Johnson was his son. They lived right in this house right over here.
Who was Dudley? Was that Papu's brother?
No, that was his son.
How many sons and daughters did Papu have?
All he had was J.D. and Hazel.
And Mimi?
Mimi, yeah, 3 of them.
3. And then he had a son named Dudley?
Yeah.
And Dudley is Big Jim's father?
No.
He's named after James Dudley.
Oh, he's named
They
after.
didn't have no children.
But he lived out here? In this
Yeah,
neighborhood?
they moved. They used to live in town. It was a nice place. They moved. They had probably 10 houses they built over that period of time.
Around this neighborhood or all over?
Oh, some of them was over in the Gulf Breeze, or across the bay. But anyway, we lived there, and Papu was, he would have money. Next week he was absolutely broke. He just couldn't stand having money. He had this property, he had property down over here, he built a house, he built another house back over here, he lost every one of them.
Really?
Yeah. And then he ended up with a shack back here,
Behind this house?
right behind Pat's house there, right over there. Him and he had a nigger living with him, a little Jesse. Jesse was he worked for the Ball family. Mason Jars, the Ball family.
You mean the railroad family?
No,
Ball. Name is
Ball. You
Ball.
see these jars.
Mason
Mason
jars.
jars.
They always
Oh,
say
mason
ball.
jars.
He worked for them. Then he was Dr. Who was the doctor that went down in the Panama Canal? Who were they?
Panama Canal?
Yeah, he was
Walter.
the doctor when he solved the malaria problem.
Walter Reed.
No, another one must have been his sister.
John
But-
Goring?
No, it wasn't Red Reed. It's a well-known name. Anyway, he was his valet man. Took care of his surgeon.
Jesse was.
Yeah.
Well, how did Jesse end up with
I don't
Papu?
So Jesse and Papu was a pair, I can guarantee you. And Jesse stood about that high.
Yeah?
Little fellow like that. He was funny. They lived up over here. And it was nothing but a tall paper. It was 1x6 siding with tall paper on it.
No kidding.
And they had a potbelly stove about that big in there. And the stove pipe went through the window. And when they put that fire in there with the lighter nuts, that stove would start dancing. Stove would do that.
No kidding.
And that stove pipe was just red hot all the way to the window panes. And he lost that. Then he built a little shack back here. So, let's see what else about it. Papu. Oh, Papu was, like I said, the building inspector. And his brother, Charlie Johnson, he was a bailiff. He was all politics. And Papu, whenever Baldwin and Bailey, any circus comes to town, he had inspected it. And they always give him ringside seat tickets.
Yeah?
And there was one year, automobile coming in, and they used to bring train with animals right down from our place on Lure Street, on there.
On the railroad track?
Yeah, they would discharge the animals and all that. And this evening, we were going to the circus, and Brother Cons and I his brother had just got through trimming mowing the lawn, and he had these scissors in there trimming around the bricks, and he put them in his back pocket. And we got, Brother Con and I got to tussling. And I don't know whether you can see the scar here. It starts from here, goes down here, goes down here. I was had it like that, and tussling, and them scissors went in there and cut. Well, you can just from here all the way down the hill.
You grabbed them? You were wrestling?
Yeah, and the circus, we had to leave about 5 or 6, I think about 5 o'clock we had to leave. This is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they said, well, we're going to take you so, you know, you're going to take me. No, I said, I'm going to the circus. So I said, just put some iodine on it. They laid me down and poured pure iodine on it.
How'd that feel?
And then they took an old piece of white cloth and wrapped around it, and we went to the circus.
Really?
They should have had about 15 stitches in there.
That's the way you did it in those days, huh?
Yeah.
Man. Well, was that the days when a kid would run away with the circus would come to town?
Yeah.
Boy, that's something.
And you could go down there and have water the elephants or something, they give you something. Or usually give you a ticket. I had all our tickets. We got tickets. Man, that went on for about 2 or 3 years.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah. Then he, I don't know what happened then, but anyway, I guess I don't know what changed him stopped being the building inspector. I guess he was pretty old then. Anyway, then about that time, that's when they had to move over here. He had a little yellow Ford coupe. He'll drive.
We talking 1930s, 1940s?
Yeah, and Daddy, his son, would give him every year at his birthday. They'd give him, he was say 60 years old. He'd give him $60 or something. But he gave him money. But Papu, he drank it up. He'd be like this beer.
He was a beer drinker.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Huh.
He would take, they'd go down and they'd have, on the beach, they'd have a fish chowder, not the fish fry, they'd make fish chowder. They would come down and catch the fish in the afternoon, the fellas, and Papu would cook the fish, make the chowder. And it was all palmettos all over there. This was nothing. This was just blackjack and palmettos.
No houses.
No houses.
Except for Papu's shack.
Papu's place there. But by that time, that's when Papu had moved over here. Fact is, we hadn't lived there. That's before I got married. But Papu would make the chowder, but there was a palmettos up on there, and every now and then they had beer, but they had home brew.
Yeah?
And there was no German across the Gulf Highway made the home brew. So they'd get that home brew and then take it down there and ice it down. And Papu would be cooking the chowder, and he'd take a bottle or two and go hide it up in the palmettos. He'd continue, and he'd probably eventually get about 5 or 6 bottles of brew up in the palmetto.
Yeah?
And then about 5 or 6 o'clock, he'd say, well, the chowder's ready. Papu would pick up this beer and go leave.
Where to?
He'd leave and go home then, to his house. Then they would have the chowder. And then they would, their fellows would get to fighting and pushing each other off the little walk we had there. And then they'd run out of beer one time. So they went up to Pops and got the bill. And they carried it down, and right as they got out the, where you went down on the slope, the bottles started popping. And an old fellow by the name of Joe Dawkins, he got cut. And they they took these they had the buns. They take them bones, and that's how they put them. They had to soak the blood up. I'll never forget that.
Out of buns
Yeah.
of bread.
Yeah, these buns. Then they get down and start gambling.
You mean he got cut by accident, or he got in a knife
When
fight?
it blew up, when the bottom blew up, it cut him.
Ah. Let me ask this, Lou. Do you know anything about Dad's father's father, Nick Condon? Did you know him? Dad's grandfather?
I've never done, all I know is Uncle Nick.
Yeah. How about this? Dad told me that they used to have special days when they would take a pig and they would get a 55-gallon drum and boil water, and they would hang this.
I don't know.
Did you ever see that?
No, I didn't see it. I've seen it at other places, but I didn't see it here.
Yeah, he said that was a real special time. You'd take the pig and you'd hang it up and cut it,
Yeah.
and bleed it out, and then drop it into this boiling 55-gallon drum. And oh boy, there was meat for everybody. You know, that was a
Now,
big.
they might have done it down at Papu's 40 acres down there. I don't know.
Yeah. How about this? Other than Papu's little place that he built out of scrap in 1927, what was the next house to be built around here? Do you remember?
Papu, well, put it this way here. You come off Gulf Beach Highway, you go through the swamp. You're going through the swamp, there was a stream going through there. And they had pine saplings cut, laid down
To go across the
to go
stream?
across it. Then you come down and there's one house right here at the end of the street. Then there's on the point over here, there was a house. Fellow's name was Purdy. He worked at the shipyard uptown. And he had a launch. He'd go to work every day in the launch.
Across the bayou?
Yeah, from bayou to town. And that was the only two houses down there. There was nothing like this Navy Point, nothing. There might have been one house or so on the other side of the highway. The only other house was further down, was down where Papu had his place, and some houses built around that. Navy Point was completely trees, old pine trees and all. Gulf Beach Highway was a dirt road.
Dirt road.
Dirt road.
Well, when you used to come out here on the weekend, Lou, would it be just you and Dad and Papu, just the three of you?
And that was the most beautiful bayou you ever see. It's beautiful. Then when we moved down here, I started building this house.
You and Thelma?
This house out here. And I said when Papu, he had lost the house right here where Colonel Mack lived in.
Did he build that house?
Yeah.
Did he build Colonel's house?
He built the Crooks' house, two-story house that he used to live in. Brother lived in it with him. And that was a nice house. I think Brother went back to South Florida. That was it.
Well-
And they moved into the old Fred Banfield's house, who was a good friend of Mary, and he was a plumber for Dirty. Papu and Jesse lived in that. And I stayed here. I used to stay down there now and then with him. And that about ended the area here. But Brother Condon, he would, Patsy was his friend, my sister Patsy.
Patsy?
Patsy. They used to get, one of the first things they used to do was put patio on his back, he'd dive over with him.
Really?
Yeah, he loved that. And Brother Con and I used to row from here down to the bay entrance. And we'd go around and we'd catch 10 or 12 dozen crabs within a half hour or so. Just go out and scoop them up.
Just like that.
And we had two sets of two banks of oars. Brother Con and I used to think he would fly. Two of us get to run in that old boat. I mean, it seemed like he was going 90 miles an hour. I know one day we were rowing down. It was raining just on one side of us, about 6 foot away, and no rain on us. And for the whole way down to White Island.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Here's something I haven't asked, Lou. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, the remaining now is Big Jim and Nancy. Then Betty and Patsy died.
But you had another
then,
sister.
And then they had a child, Margie, before I was born, and she died, I think, maybe 1 or 2 years old. Of some, I don't know what disease was.
But
You know, then in those days, you had a lot of scarlet fever. And, what the other fever was?
polio,
Well, they had polio, but
whooping.
it was another fever. I forgot what it is. It wasn't malaria. I don't know what you call it. Anyway, they posted a quarantine sign on your front door.
If you had one of these.
I had diphtheria. Almost died from that.
You had
I
diphtheria?
had diphtheria, and I can recall it.
How old were you?
They had me in the crib, and I can remember this. That old doctor, oh man, I think of the name. That doctor come there, and he had a needle. And he would go on and draw fluid out of my stomach, and that needle was about, that tube was about that big, hypodermic tube, and that was about